I don't think James Gunn can just be a producer. I think it would hurt him on the inside to do that. I think he has to be a writer-director. So I think if they said this is the situation, you can be one or the other, but not both. I think he's going to say someone else run this because I want to write and direct and do my little corner of the universe and be that. I really do. I don't think he would choose if he had to choose. I don't think he would choose the producing side.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Jet Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me as always is Mr. Brian Schultz. DC Roundup. As they say, the plot thickens. There seems to be some reshuffling or some new players has thrown their hat in the ring to make their presence known that they are interested, which is an interesting situation because now, knowing what we know about this company trying to perhaps get some IP, they're real particular as to what they want, and this could definitely make things very interesting in terms of numbers, in terms of who gets what. Colin Farrell talking about Sergeant Rock and the Batman 2. He has stellar things to say about the Batman 2, and we can't pick and choose who gets to say the most, not necessarily the most outrageous things, but the most complimentary things. And then, we get what we get, and then we're like, but there's history here with Batman 2. So I'm pretty sure what he had to say regarding the Batman is something that we should definitely pay attention to because we are expecting a lot from this next movie. James Gunn teases some Man of Tomorrow details about the potential villain, and certainly we already know who we may be getting. I don't know if it's just that villain or perhaps another villain that we may be getting alongside, but we'll dive into that. Supergirl is doing some additional filming, and this is a movie that we've had some history with indirectly in the sense that there's history there with female-led superhero films or female-led films, period. So, but this is a huge film, I think, for DCU. So we'll get into that as well. And another tidbit regarding WB and Paramount. If Paramount gets it, they're looking to keep the team intact. We'll see what that means. I think there's a little bit of calming the flames so they don't spread. They want people to talk about something else other than this. But that's what I think. But let's get into it. Brian, what's the latest on the WB and Paramount?
Okay, so we have a couple things on the merger front, or reported merger front. And it's interesting because last week, when we were discussing these rumors that were going around about James Gunn being out as part of the Paramount deal and why he would be out because of tension with other creators and vision for the DCU. And I cautioned, I said, look, this seems really premature. And I think there's some disgruntled people kind of, leaking some stuff that they don't like about James Gunn and trying to fold it up into this merger discussion. So now we get a 180 rumor from that this week. But I would actually attach very similar caution to this rumor as I did to the other one and say, not everything may be as it seems here, and a lot is still to be determined. So the rumor of this week, what seems to be going around is the closeness of Larry Ellison to the current president has it such that the administration would prefer Paramount be the winner in these sweepstakes. So they are viewed as having an inside track from an approval process standpoint. But they obviously need to win it financially too. I mean, that's still a responsibility of WB. So a report came out this week that David Ellison wants to keep all of the creative teams of the two studios intact while consolidating more the marketing and the distribution. And they are undecided as to whether they will keep all of the studio lots that would be combined with the two entities. So people obviously took the creative teams intact and ran with it as a James Gunn is safe report, which I believe John Campea, among others, claimed that he had sources saying that, in fact, James Gunn would be safe, in line with this report.
Mm-hmm.
I am simply here to say, let's not call that a lock just yet. And that's not just for James Gunn. I'm saying for everyone involved. You hit on it. That smells to me a little bit of almost preemptive damage control from the would-be acquirer to try to make the would-be seller feel a little safer in their shoes. But use your head, use your common sense. All of these two houses have duplicate roles to some extent. The idea that they would all stay and all be exactly as they were is just not typically how these things operate. So does it reduce some of the fire that was under James Gunn's seat relative to last week? Who knows? Like I said, I never thought the chances of him being out were as high as the first report. I don't think the chances of him being kept are as high because of this report either.
I think it still comes along, Brian, if it ever happens or when it happens, that there'll be a conversation had with James Gunn about his role. And I for one believe that the conversation will probably move him towards being what a Kevin Feige is to the MCU, rather than him being the head guy in charge, directing, writing. Is just too much. There's no way I think he can possibly keep it going for that long without the content suffering, so to speak.
So that's it. You think they'd push him to be more the fight? I think if that was the conversation, I think Gunn himself would leave. To me, like everything like I said, I highly recommend people at least listen to some of the Peacemaker podcasts, where especially listen to what Jennifer Holland says, because obviously they're married. I don't think James Gunn can just be a producer. I think it would hurt him on the inside to do that. I think he has to be a writer director. So I think if they said this is the situation, you can be one or the other, but not both. I think he's going to say someone else run this, because I want to write and direct and do my little corner of the universe and be that. I really do. I don't think he would choose if he had to choose, I don't think he would choose the producing side as his number one thing.
Neither do I, but hence it is why you should have the conversation, because listen, people can say what they want, Brian, about the state of the DCU. Oh, it's successful, or we did a success. Yo, that's not the conversation. People can, in my opinion, people can say what they want about the DCU and the success that it's had, or it's barely. That's why we say 2026 is going to be very interesting. Right now, the way DCU has started is not something I think certainly to compare to the initial, I think, success of the MCU when they first started out. I don't think its first run with James Gunn putting out Superman, Creature Commandos, Peacemaker, I don't think it equates to what the MCU started. I think we still have a long way to go in terms of getting towards the success that to rival the MCU's success.
So I would agree in the sense of Superman as an initial arrival and launch point. It was not as successful as Iron Man 1. So Iron Man 1, just for reference, made $585 million in 2008 dollars, which today would be about $1 billion. So $1 billion launch. Superman made $611 million in today's dollars, right? So the initial project, you have to say the MCU swung and connected bigger, right? Superman's probably a double. Iron Man was a home run. Now, if we're being fair, the MCU then has several projects that are kind of okay, right? Incredible Hulk was a
Yes.
commercial disappointment. Captain America and Thor made money, but not gobs of money. It
Yeah.
is not until the Avengers that the top gets blown off, right? Records start getting set and people are like, wow, they pulled this off. What is possible from here? So if you're kind of looking at, like, if you're trying to do the side by side, Iron Man definitely ahead of Superman out of the gate. But the MCU would now be entering a phase of like, yeah, these are okay, but we're not sure for the next couple of years. And so you could argue like DC could certainly play some catch up, right? If you say like if Supergirl hits, if Clayface hits, even if they're not huge numbers, if they just are like real successes critically, creatively, fans like what they see, and then Man of Tomorrow, moves up to like 850, then you would probably say DC would be on par, if not even a little bit ahead of where the MCU was at that time, like at Project 3 and 4. So, but they don't have, DC obviously doesn't have an Avengers Justice League. They don't have a Justice League project that close, right? So they don't have that in the bag waiting.
Does the MCU, and this is not an MCU discussion, but I just want to make the comparison of what if that end credit scene wasn't there? Those connective tissues at the end of these movies weren't there. How would people feel about these movies or the anticipation of what was to come? How would it be different? The only reason why we know DCU is on a course towards an end game, so to speak, MCU made it a part of their movies. Whereas DCU, we're not getting that connective tissue, so to speak. So I wonder, has that impacted the excitement level of people looking forward to certain things? Because when Iron Man came out and we got that cutscene, Brian, of Nick Fury talking about what he was talking about, that set the stage. How does the MCU work without that initial cutscene? How do you feel? Is it forgotten? Is it forgotten after that?
Well, I guess I would counter that though and say, like, how much did that scene actually add to the box office of Iron Man 1? I would submit not a lot.
Not a lot,
I
but
don't think
it
so.
definitely kept people excited for
So
the
I agree
next
with
thing
that.
to come.
I agree that
Yes.
it kept them in the conversation for what came next, but I don't think it determined whether anyone went out to the box office to see that first movie. It just was something that really hadn't been used in quite that way. And you read Rise of the MCU, they kind of admit that they didn't know that they were really going to be able to go anywhere with that. They did it as fans, right? They did it as nerds of the genre to be like, this is how comic books are written. There's always a hook, right, and a tease, and so they did it, and they're like, we're gonna do it. We might as well swing big, right? If I was to say on the DC side, I don't think they've closed off the possibility of doing it down the road. They just haven't done it out of the gate. And you could argue they're looking around and seeing MCU fatigue and saying maybe audiences don't necessarily want everything to be about the next thing. I know you do, but I'm saying I think they're looking at it and saying, well, these credit scenes have been watered down, which they have, to the point where we are better off not having those or having the Easter eggs be in the films themselves. And then we still have the option, right, at some point to introduce that. But the other thing is when I look at these projects that are on the board, right, Supergirl, Clayface, these are risks, right? These are things that may come and go. They may not be successful. And if you tie yourself in with a bunch of credit scenes, you don't want to be left with like, hey, we have to service a bunch of characters who didn't hit with audiences, which, by the way, the MCU is also struggling with now, right? Like they've planted all these seeds that have gone nowhere. And it's kind of like, are they going to leave them? Are they going to force themselves to do anything? Like, I mean, we'll do our Marvel show. Like, there's a one little blurb about something that was cut from like an iteration of Kang Dynasty where I just was like, I rolled my eyes and it was just like, let it, like, where's Rambo in the jungle? Let it go. Like, my God, like, but this is what I mean. When you start writing yourself in certain directions and then you use these credit scenes to make it seem like they're headed somewhere, you kind of are like twisting, like, okay, now I do have to take this somewhere. I have to pay this off. And like DC at least kind of has that optionality of like, they don't really have to do that yet. And because they don't really maybe know all the characters who are going to be their real core characters yet. They say they have pillars. And we kind of know, like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but like some of those other characters, we don't totally know like what's going to work yet. So maybe they're waiting, and at some point they'll transition into that. But I don't know. I don't think it's all bad is my point. I don't think it's all good. I don't think it's all bad. It's a choice.
Yeah. On the wanting to keep creative teams intact, I would assume that HBO team they're not even touching that, right?
Well, you would assume not, but this is where I want to get like corporate speak versus reality. Okay, I sent you this. The second I saw this story hit, and I saw the the guys that can't be were like, no, confirmed. Like this is my sources are saying. I'm like, and I'm doing the lead course though. Not so fast, my friend. I sent you an article from 2018 when Walt Disney was in the process of buying 20th Century Fox, and the deal had not yet closed, but the deal had been announced. I don't need to read the whole article. All I need to read to you is the headline. Disney keeps 20th Century Fox subsidiaries and executive hierarchy intact. Anybody want to look around and see if they're intact?
Did you get the memo?
They're not. Like, the point is, what came to light after this story hit was there was a plan, and they picked and chose on each side people they wanted. And that meant existing people were out. If you don't think that on some level that's going to happen here, no matter who buys Warner Brothers, I think you've not been paying attention to the history of corporate mergers, let alone media mergers. There will be changes. And honestly, there will be people who are offered jobs who leave. Do not underestimate that either. I say that because it already happened. A big one already happened.
Which we will be getting into, of course.
Well, I'm just saying, like, do you want to just talk about him now? He doesn't have to be a whole mention, but like,
sure.
Taylor Sheridan.
I wanted to know. I wanted to know the significance of it because I'm not too familiar. Even though he's done a lot of exceptional work for them, and so him leaving has been in the headlines this past week a lot. So could you just go into what the significance of this is?
Yeah. So Taylor Sheridan left Paramount this week to go to NBC Universal, and Taylor Sheridan, of course, he is Paramount Plus. I mean, not just Yellowstone on network TV, 1883, 1923, Tulsa King, which is their number one show, Lioness, Mayor of Kingstown. Those are all his shows. Created them all, wrote most of them, directed a bunch of them. He is Paramount. And so Paramount just closed the Skydance merger. You know that they weren't looking to get rid of Taylor Sheridan as part of that merger. But what did Taylor Sheridan do? He looked around at the new landscape of his existing company, not even WB, and he said, what you hear is Taylor Sheridan's kind of operated with like complete autonomy because of his success. They were looking to put some checks and balances on him in terms of budgets, in terms of like he shoots a lot from his ranch in Texas, not from LA. And so he said, he did the Sam Jackson. You need me a lot more than I need you. And NBC Universal came along and offered him, albeit an incentive-laden deal, that he doesn't leave until 2028, which I think is interesting. And he can't take any of his existing shows because those are Paramount IP. But they offered him a deal that reportedly is worth $1 billion. And he said, hell yes, I will go for $1 billion. So my point is, even when you say change is not the plan, change is already occurring.
Yeah, man. Him being as successful as he has with the stuff that he's done, with the leeway that he has had to think about that changing brings worry to what he does, to his routine, to whatever it is, how he does, he's happy with how he's doing things now. To have that possibly change in a way that is disruptive to that gives him that, I guess, moment of pause and reflection as to what his next move should be. And he made it.
Listen closely to, like, as Pablo said, he had full autonomy under old leadership. Under new leadership, post the merger, They wanted to control. They wanted control. They wanted oversight. So these are the same people that are bidding for WB. Same people looked at Taylor Sheridan after the Paramount Skydance merger and said, buddy, you got to play ball with us. We're not going to give you as much money. We're going to meddle in your projects. And he left. So you think that philosophy is somehow not going to be applied if they were to win WB? I mean, you're seeing them with their megastar already in house, changing how they were supervising him. And he exited immediately. So you're just getting a little hint of like the management style. That's all I'm saying.
The management style that James Gunn would fall under.
Correct.
What does James Gunn have now? Full autonomy to do whatever he wants.
Seems like.
A la Peacemaker, yes. Anything he wants, that will possibly change. Hence why I asked the questions of what will be the approach when James Gunn is possibly a part of this new organization, and what will come with it.
Yeah. Let me just give you that.
That's going to be a very interesting thing.
But let's stay with this point. Because Sheridan, as we talk about, is another one of these, like, he writes like it's a bodily function. I see these shows and I'm like, he wrote 8 of the 10 episodes or 10 of the I'm like, how? There's like 7 shows that come out in a year. And by the way, most of his shows are pretty good. I haven't really noticed a lot of quality control failures in when he writes personally. But one of the things that came up is the new executives post the merger pushed back on some of his scripts, and he didn't like that. Who else likes to write a lot of scripts and greenlight a lot of his own scripts? And as far as we can tell, hasn't had a lot of pushback. I'm just, this is what I mean by, like, you just need to, like, see. It's easy to look at headlines and reports and leaks. Look at actions. The first definitive action was Taylor Sheridan leaving
look at history
for these reasons. The very house that is trying to acquire WB. And I'm not saying James Gunn would quit or, like, do it. It's not to say. All I'm saying is face value is not worth a lot these days. Very little is at face value. And what's going to go on behind the scenes is just a different way of doing business than what either of these sides have really been used to.
I would say James Gunn is certainly thinking about what the possibilities are. And listen, to run DCU Studios is a dream come true for either one of us, right? I think he certainly will test the waters. I don't think he's gonna test to see how things are, what sort of pushback he gets, what sort of barriers and restrictions that they place upon him that will make him either break or adjust in order for him to do what he's doing with the DCU. We shall see what happens there, because that is a very interesting situation.
And all of that assumes, here's a segue, that it is in fact Paramount who ultimately wins. Because speaking of face value not counting for a lot, we had another party at the table who publicly was like, no, what are you talking about? We're not involved. We're not going to bid. And then what happened?
25, 35, 75, 45, 55, 35.
Opportunity. Opportunity. I was talking shout outs to Spy4994 and shout outs to Ozzy too from the Nutty Basement. He wanted to get in on this conversation, but the time changed, so I don't know. Things got messed up, but hopefully we can get him on the show next time to talk about the latest developments. But I was talking to Tracy about Netflix and what possibly they're thinking about. Just imagine, Brian, that the only place you can see DC is at Netflix. And with their current experiment with Stranger Things releasing in the movie theaters, they're testing the waters, Brian. They're testing to see what sort of business can evolve from this execution of doing this simultaneously with Netflix to sort of get everybody, with Stranger Things to get everybody to go to the theaters, to pay whatever it is that they need to pay in order to get that communal experience of watching Stranger Things together. We'll get to see that. And then the only place you get to watch Stranger Things is on Netflix. Imagine that with DC. That is why I've been saying, yo, I wonder how much DC is. How much is it worth to them for the ability to get all those fans who love DC IP? Netflix is the only place to get it. It's all about subscribers for them. So this is an opportunity to get that subscription up quite a bit if you're not a subscriber of Netflix.
I would also say in this era, as we've seen, it's also an opportunity to raise prices of existing subscribers, right? I mean, if you look at what's going on, I mean, you got any of you guys at home who are watching, how many notices have you gotten in the past year about your prices of your plans going up by $1 or $2 a month, right? The idea is that once they have you with the content they have, they can keep you and they can exert pricing power over you. Obviously, the stronger your library, the more exclusive some of your content, the easier it is to justify a bigger and more regular price increase on existing subscribers, let alone attracting new ones. So the funny thing, though, is Netflix on October 21st, when they reported their own earnings, was asked about mergers and acquisitions, and because they were rumored to be at the table for WB, to which Ted Sarandos at the time, quote, "It's true that historically we have been more builders than buyers, and we think we have plenty of runway for growth without fundamentally changing that playbook. We have been very clear in the past we have no interest in owning legacy media networks, so there is no change there. But in general, we believe we can and will be very choosy about acquisitions. We are predominantly focused on growing organically, so no deals, investing aggressively and responsibly into growth and returning excess cash flow to shareholders." That was October 21st. Now, he's clearly dancing because he specifies legacy media, right? That's what, which they're not. But what comes out on the end of this week, and again, we said this is not a surprise, Netflix hired investment bankers to explore and put together a bid for the streamer and the studio of WB only. So not the legacy media networks, but they're formalizing their bid. And I can tell you in a read between the lines, from a timing perspective, they know as well as we do, Amazon and Apple are just kind of, you have to go first to try to beat them because they have deeper pockets. That's the end of it. So you see Paramount comes out with a lead saying, we'll take everything. Netflix only wants the one piece of it. They want to come strong early because they know if the other two get involved, the best hope they have is drive up the price, try to get this off the board, try to get approval before they get involved. But Amazon and Apple are sitting there waiting to see who else wants to play before they start to consider their own options there. So again, my point is Netflix was doing everything it could a week ago to talk down the prospects of a bid, and a week later their actions were to prep a bid.
To borrow from Sting,
is nothing's for sure.
But it's also a use your head type of time, right? As you said, right? Like the common sense answer is usually closer to the truth. Like you're framing the common sense of it. You can be the exclusive home of not just DC, right? But Harry Potter, the Mattel stuff. Now you might have Ryan Coogler as a captive director. Like you just go down the list of what they have. HBO properties, all the television properties, Game of Thrones, all that stuff. And you're one of the most powerful, if not prolific, streamers in the world. Common sense says you're going to take a look at those assets. Common sense says that. So you can say everything you want to the world. Common sense says you're not being a good executive team and a good board if you don't look at the possibility of acquiring those assets when they come available. And they are.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. The theatrical thing with them is like, it's like a love-hate relationship. But Stranger Things was significant because it's really the first time they used a television property in that way. They obviously have dabbled in limited theatrical. Some of Zack Snyder's stuff they did. K-pop Demon Hunters they put for a sing-along for a weekend. But they have a contentious relationship with theaters because I think that some of the AMC screens won't show Netflix stuff because they've been so publicly anti-theater, which goes to the long-term game, which we've speculated of like, why deal with that tussle? Just acquire some theaters yourself. Then you don't have to worry about it. So I think Netflix is like, there's toes in the water for how to maximize and monetize a theatrical experience that's like exclusive to them.
It only makes sense, man. It only makes sense. You changed TV. Now you have the opportunity to change movies in a way that's certainly much different than what we've had for decades. They're a game changer. It's time to change the game again.
Well, if they don't do it, I think someone else will. So in terms of what we've been talking about, I think, as again, this is another common sense moment, right? The common sense moment is these people are going to do what makes them money. And like what we're talking about is kind of a layup to make money if you figure out the model right.
That's just too easy.
Yeah, hit that like and subscribe, man.
We'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted. We're on it.
Yeah. So you can get the latest on what's going on.
And are we using our new moniker for this? Because every time we do these stories, we're trying to give you the extra, right? Don't just take it at face value. So we're trying to give you the
Sword of Omens. Give me sight beyond sight.
Sight beyond sight segment. This is what's happening. This is what we think might happen.
Yeah.
Because it only makes sense. It only makes sense. So Colin Farrell speaks on Sergeant Rock and Batman 2, but let's talk about Batman 2 for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the exact quotes, but I did listen to his remarks on getting the script. He did mention he read it the first time, but he was a bit distracted and he read it a second time.
2 weeks later, he like carved out a whole day. He's on Josh Harwood's podcast. Farrell's a great interview. So he like sets the stage of how he's reading the script. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So he says some things regarding the Batman 2 that are nothing but complimentary, and you can see the excitement of him wanting to get to work on this. Perhaps not the excitement on getting into the suit again, but certainly the script and how this movie perhaps may turn out. He was very cautious because you can hear, I think he said at one point, I don't think I'm saying too much, but I cannot wait to hear the type of Batman we get, where he is in his journey, and how it sort of manifests during this movie and towards the end, to see if we possibly get a Batman 3. I don't know where we are with. We haven't talked about that, but Batman 2 is something that obviously would perhaps, because originally it was a trilogy that Matt Reeves wanted to do. He doesn't know if that's possible yet, but we'll see where the appetite after Batman 2 is for a Batman 3. And I quite honestly, if we get to reach $1 billion on Batman 2 and the excitement is as equal to what the Batman when it first arrived, then there will be no hesitation. Certainly there will be some conversations with Matt Reeves, like where we at with Batman 3. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, listen, and that conversation is going to be had with different people now. Do not underestimate that. I think we had a track we were on. We have talked many times about the seeming uneasy creative side by side of James Gunn and Matt Reeves. Seems like they do work. They are able to coexist, but there clearly is some competition there. There's clearly some stuff behind the scenes we don't know about. But that's about to change. Someone else is going to be in control of this entire enterprise by the time that decision is made. And I know people don't want to hear this, but again, you're going to have people coming in from the outside who have no skin in the game. And if what they see out of the gate is Batman Part 2 goes to $1.2 billion and is getting the kind of critical acclaim on the awards circuit that Penguin was getting, yeah, there's going to be a Batman Part 3. Because the people that were kind of marginalizing the Reeves verse are no longer going to have as much influence any way you cut it. And I hate to reintroduce this, but I think you have to file away in the back of your head. We know in the current incarnation the plan has not been to have Robert Pattinson be the DCU Batman. We know that. That's not the goal. That's not what James Gunn wants. But you don't know what a new owner wants. And if a new owner is going to come in and start to meddle and have their own views on things, and they look around and be, I'm just speculating. You just say, look, let's say you got a world where Man of Tomorrow makes $650 million and Batman Part 2 makes $1.2 billion. And you got a studio executive with no history and no allegiance to what's been done that looks at that and is like, well, that's our Batman. What are we talking about here? Like, I'm just saying that conversation is going to probably get rehashed and reopened because there's someone else going to be in the room making the decisions, at least with regard to budgets, if not with regard to projects. Even if James Gunn is still ultimately the arbiter of DCU, it sounds like, and is probably likely to be the case, that it's just a little different dynamic than he has today, which may open the door for all sorts of things we thought were done or thought were finished or thought had been completed. So I just leave it out there.
If that was being presented to me, I would say we got to look at history. How many Batmen have we had? How many success stories with different Batmans have we had? I am still under the belief that you can have, we just recently saw 3 Spider-Mans on screen, and then now we're having conversations on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, and now we have Tom Holland's. Why can't we have this world where Batman is doing his thing? No other. I'm fine with that. I think most Batman fans are fine with that, and I think most casual fans that don't know nothing will be fine with that, as long as it is compelling enough, because Batman is a compelling character, and we haven't even, I think, in my opinion, haven't scratched the surface of what Batman is and can be on screen.
I completely agree with you. I'm just saying it's a wild card, and it's a wild card that we didn't have in the equation 6 months ago, 3 months ago, and so you just never know, right? And if someone says we've only got the budget for one, it's like this new unknown that wasn't there before. And I got to say, like, it felt like the balance of power was squarely in James Gunn's camp. And now it's sort of a little up in the air. We don't know exactly what's going to happen.
I would hesitate if it was James Gunn writing Batman and directing Batman. That's where I would hesitate.
So in describing the script, he does add, I think, one thing that I circled and was like, oh, that's interesting. So he said, quote, I had many thoughts to share with Matt about the script. I really do think it's a masterwork, kind of a contemporary genre masterwork. It's so brilliant, and Robert meaning Pattinson, has got such a lovely journey to go on and take the audience through. It's dense. It's really, really intelligent. It's so deep and detailed. I'm saying too much, but I think he's going to make an extraordinary film, end quote.
It is consistent with some have said regarding Robert Pattinson's character, the Batman, in terms of the journey that he will be on in this film. Something that I think Matt Reeves has said regarding this exploration has never really occurred with the Batman on screen. And so we keep on hearing that sort of description of what this Batman will likely have to endure in this next iteration. I'm just ecstatic to see what this will be.
I like this quote because we know from Farrell's previous comments, his part is very small. As he said, smaller in Batman Part 2 than it was in Batman Part 1. So he is relaying this almost as much as a fan as he is a participant. And that's why I thought the Pattinson quote was the one that got my attention, was the idea that he's reading it as someone who is on the inside, knowing that effectively for this to work, that lovely journey has to occur. This trilogy or this series of movies will not be successful if Pattinson is simply the sort of emo, tortured youth that he is in the first part. That works as a starting point if we can get to a different ending point. So for Farrell to highlight that the thing basically he wants the public to know is that Batman's journey in this story is kind of the thing, I thought was encouraging, shall we say.
That's why I'm excited to see what this movie will bring, because for the most part, The Dark Knight, it made $1 billion, but it wasn't because it wasn't because Christian Bale's Batman, it was the performance. It was, yeah.
And his passing, to be fair. I don't know that it makes $1 billion. I hate to say that, but I don't know that it makes $1 billion if he was alive at the time it comes out. I do think there was an aspect of, similar to Paul Walker and Furious 7, why that movie made so much more money than the other Fast movies. There is this aspect of when one of the stars passes, and this is kind of like your last chance to see them on screen. I do think it sort of galvanizes a little more interest and intrigue.
But for Heath, the performance was the thing that people were mostly talking about in terms of his Joker. Paul Walker was never known to be, a great actor, so to speak.
No,
right?
You're right. But there's no question, that thing made $1.5 billion, and none of the other Fast movies are within 400 million of that. Some of that was a tribute to Paul Walker, kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, so I do think also, in fairness, the other thing with Dark Knight beyond Ledger is most of it. I think Dark Knight is also the best paced of the Nolan movie. If you rewatch that, it just flows in a very, very rewatchable fashion. I love Batman Begins. That one to me is two movies, right? That one, the first part is to me the perfect part, the origin part. The second part is a little different and does get there's moments in that where you're he's maybe still figuring out his way in terms of how to direct Batman. Whereas I feel in The Dark Knight, because he's riffing on Heat and some of these crime dramas, that movie is pretty banging from start to finish. There's not a lot of wasted scenes or space. And then Dark Knight Rises gets a little heavy, right? You see the pacing kind of slow. He's trying to tie everything up. It's longer. So Dark Knight is that perfect amalgam of it. You have this force of nature character in the Joker arriving on screen. And then you have the movie itself in Nolan's hands. And this is also the first time he shoots in IMAX. So you kind of have these groundbreaking things happening, and the way it's put together, the movie is close to perfect, if not right on that level. So yeah, I hear you. This thing won't have that kind of Heath Ledger performance. We kind of know that. It has to be Pattinson himself, as I've said, who really is the star. He has to be the one where you come out of the movie and you're okay, whatever they did with the villains was great, but man, what Pattinson did, that's the thing. That really is how this is designed to work.
Sergeant Rock?
Yeah, he's pretty open about basically saying, quote, I was going to do it with Luca, meaning Guadagnino. Spoke about it a couple times, had some really nice chats. I have no idea where it is now, but it should be made because it's really, really good. There's some wonderful stuff in it. And he said, God, that was a fantastic script. I only wonder what's happening with it, end quote. So he kind of tells you the state of play. He was in it. He was ready to do it. He liked the writing. And then they changed everything. And so now he's basically telling you this sounds pretty dead in the water. Now, James Gunn officially has kind of said it's still in limbo out there, but Farrell's making it seem like there's nothing happening.
It's done.
Yeah.
And like you said before, the people, I guess, attached to the possibility of making that movie have sort of, how would I say, not really feeling Luca Guadagnino anymore.
So this is
his ability.
I'll give you the Gunn quote, which was never confirmed to be about Sergeant Rock, but people have speculated he was talking about Sergeant Rock. He does not share Colin Farrell's appraisal of this, by the way. So this is the quote that people think is Sergeant Rock. We had a screenplay this is Gunn talking, a movie that was greenlit. We got second draft, third draft. It just wasn't changing. It wasn't getting any better. It was staying in the same place. And I said, we can't make this film. We can't. It's not good. And we know it's not good. Just because we have a good director attached and a good screenwriter, it doesn't mean the script is working. Everyone's going to be upset at the end of this. It's going to come out. The movie's not going to be good. The director's going to look bad. The writer will look bad. We're going to look bad. So I don't want to have this. We're not going to make the movie. So we killed it. End quote. People think that's Sergeant Rock that James Gunn is talking about. Now, I said he later kind of made it seem like it was still kind of around in some other form. But this is the quote people think is him talking about the same script that Colin Farrell says is fantastic. which is, yeah.
That's why I say it's rich coming from James Gunn, all the things that he said.
Well, I think it's just tough when you look at, as I said, as we've gone along, some of the individual choices, and you could argue slippage in Peacemaker scripts in particular, right? It's like you're kind of seeing him say, like, this is great, the favorite thing I've worked on. He's greenlighting it, nobody's stopping him. And then people are kind of not satisfied and not happy with what he wrote and what he directed. And then he's kind of casting aspersions at something like this, which we never got to see. And you got the lead of the movie saying, no, I really like the script. Like, I thought it was great and they should definitely make it. Like, I mean, that's kind of how Hollywood works. But we're seeing this with the Batman Part 2, right? As we said, where Gunn kind of is like mid on the script. And then like everyone involved in the project. And now with Colin Farrell calling it a masterwork, it's like somebody's lying, like somebody's wrong. But
I honestly don't believe anything James Gunn says about things being good. I gotta wait till I see it first.
Well, I would say certainly we have very few people we can trust in this regard these days, but I think the DC folks, between the experience on Flash and I think the experience on the end of Peacemaker, yeah, there's not a lot of credibility to hype a project right now.
There has been some villain casting description for Man of Tomorrow, Brian. What is that?
Yeah, so this is obviously, we've seen the cover of the script, which has a giant brain on it, and so everyone has kind of speculated that the new threat that Superman and Lex are teaming up against as part of the, I guess, launch of this Salvation run that James Gunn is going to be on, is that we're finally going to get Brainiac in live action. So they've started the casting search for the unnamed villain, and so you're getting what qualities and things are they looking for? And so things that have come out that people are sort of focused on are, quote, actors with a strong build and stature are being looked at for the role, and the film's antagonist will require the extensive use of makeup and prosthetics. So people are speculating that if you think about Brainiac's, when he's sort of in his humanoid form, obviously you would need a ton of makeups and prosthetics to kind of cover over and put the mechanical and the 3 dots and 3 lights and that sort of stuff. And so I think but he also looks physically imposing. He's not tiny. So I think the thought is that's feeding into the idea that they're looking for a Brainiac who they're then going to make green and add a bunch of technological attachments to bring him to life when he's not just a computer presence.
Who fits that bill? The Skarsgård?
We had talked about that. We had talked about I think you do, in this case, in this world, I do think you want a taller Brainiac, if possible, because of Holt and Corin Sweat both being 6'4". So yeah, the Skarsgård brothers are 6'4" also, just as an obvious one. I think one is actually 6'5", but there are other people who could do it. I think it also depends on, I think with Brainiac, it's like, what are you going to do with his voice, right? Are you going to manipulate the voice to make it sound more mechanical, more computer? Are you going to allow him to have a human voice, almost like the Terminator, more to blend in? I think there's some choices here that will lead you in different directions of actor. Because at the end of the day, the prosthetics will hide. You're hiding the hair, you're hiding a lot of the skin tone. So you can do, I heard people were speculating I will butcher his name, so I won't try to pronounce it. I heard some folks speculating that the actor who played the High Evolutionary in Guardians 3 might be a candidate to do this.
I mean, he wants to play the Joker too. So, to me, I don't know. I don't know. But it would be I think one of the things for me, and then I think we'll move on to Supergirl additional filming with Ultron, is that the character has sort of like a personality trait in terms of how he spoke and that sort of, I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Ultron in terms of how he sounds. I just didn't like that he had so much personality and jokey and all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. Even though I still think it was a good movie.
But that was also, to be fair though, James Spader voiced Ultron, but he was not Ultron. Yeah. This would suggest they are looking for someone who can physically be Brainiac, right? So that's if it is Brainiac.
Oh, somebody was saying, I think in the article, somebody speculated perhaps Mongol.
That was the other one that got thrown out. Yeah. Doesn't really
Which
fit
would be
with the teases James Gunn has made, but
yeah. Supergirl has started additional filming, Brian. What do you have on that?
so this was not reshoots. I triple checked this to see were they actually reshooting, and they said no. This was a window of time they had left in the initial production schedule to kind of do some additional pickups. But what got my attention, and I kind of wanted to talk about it with you, was apparently these scenes that are being added in are predominantly David Corenswet scenes. And this was corroborated by the fact that some of the costumes from Superman the movie are on display. And they took the actual Corenswet costume off display and left a sign that said currently being used in production. My question to you is, we know he has to be a presence in this film because of the universe. But do you worry at all that too many Corenswet scenes in Supergirl starts to take away from Supergirl?
I believe so. Again, we don't know what they're filming. I would suspect we may get either in the beginning or at the end of the film as a post-credit scene.
Okay.
I don't know if we necessarily get too much Cornsweat in between. That's what I suspect.
I hope you are correct. I was a little nervous reading this, and I immediately kept thinking of Ballerina because they had shot Ballerina with Ana de Armas and then decided and kind of got cold feet and were like, you know what this movie needs as a John Wick spinoff? It needs John Wick. And they went and got Keanu and they added Keanu scenes in. And I got to be honest, like, I think it hurts her in the movie because you see him throughout the movie. You see him in the climactic set piece. And if you watch that movie, tell me you're not waiting to see what he does the entire time because you know he's right there. And so I'm just a little afraid of like, if Corenswet is actually like interlaced somewhere in this adventure, that like we're just going to be waiting for Superman to do Superman things. And if we see Supergirl doing Superman things, we're going to be like, wait, but the dude's right there. Like, I think you're right. He has to be very carefully positioned as like the beginning and the end and not in the story in any meaningful way.
Because again, this is off-world. Right? This is planet hopping. This is different. To have Superman in these situations, you would have to have some sort of good explanation as to why he's there. How did he get there? How did he know about that? Already, that sounds like too much. So having him in the beginning, perhaps, I don't know, but in the beginning to sort of set the stage, so to speak, of how perhaps Kara met Superman, or the end of the film in terms of where they are going next. But to have him in the middle of all this is a huge mistake. And I just think Gunn, if he does put him in the middle of this, it's just Gunn being Gunn and not being able to help himself.
It would certainly feel that way. I thought that the one sense in which the one sense that this really made sense to me when I read it was like flashback. We have already heard there's like a Crypto flashback, or you're going to see Crypto as a puppy at some point in this movie. So that has to be flashback, right? And obviously, you know, exactly. You see Pablo's rolling his eyes and shaking his head because he knows that's really the gun of it all. But I'm hoping that Superman's participation is limited to flashback.
Yeah.
I just don't want him in this storyline. And quite honestly, like, I know we're probably in James Gunn's world headed toward a Lobo Superman showdown somewhere down the road. You don't even want to bring them close to each other in this story if you can help it. And I think if you're trying to earmark Millie Alcock as being a truly different character and try to not fall into some of the tropes, as we talked about, of the Furiosas and the Ballerinas and things that have made those projects kind of struggle, I think you want to keep them as far apart as possible. You want Millie Alcock acting differently, doing things differently, you know, performing feats and tasks in a way where you're like, that, yeah, she's got the S on her uniform, but she's not Superman. She's not a female Superman. She is Supergirl, her own character. And this character in comics kind of does give you a little bit of leeway to do that. And this storyline in particular, where she is down on life and she is, she does drink and she does things that Superman would never do. Like, there are opportunities there to stamp her as a really different type of hero or anti-hero, depending on how you want to cast it. So I just think more corn sweat is not the answer here.
Yeah, that's how DC Roundup, unless you have anything else, Brian.
No, that's it for this week.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on with the WB and where DCU might end up, because that's what I'm more concerned about. I don't care about anything else. I want to know what DC happens. I've been talking about DC and the possibilities of what could happen with DC and this IP for years already. And now we're getting closer to see what happens.
Listen, I got to be honest though. I'm rooting for Amazon. I mean, I think that's, to me, granted, I am rooting for that based on hype more than reality, in the sense of, we haven't even seen what Amazon is going to do with James Bond. We just have the initial sort of seeds with Villeneuve and so forth. But to me, that is the best marriage of what DC can be, from a big screen commitment perspective, to a streaming perspective, to a merchandising perspective, to a crossover perspective. That's the house to me that I believe would open up the most doors and possibilities. But, that's just from the outside. And they haven't even formally bid, and I don't think they would until the 11th hour.
So yeah, let us know. Also, Netflix reportedly prepping bid, right? That is a big thing there. Colin Farrell speaks on Sergeant Rock and Batman 2. Batman 2, I'm telling you, is going to be a very interesting thing to see, and how that ends up with the fans, because that will determine how James Gunn approaches Batman and what the new owner, possibly, of the DC IP will want to continue with. So it'll be interesting. And Man of Tomorrow villain cast description, and what could we be getting there is interesting. And Supergirl, hopefully corn sweat is not in this film to the degree with which we want him to be in this film. So those are things to really look out for. But hit that like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to get the latest when we put stuff out. And we'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.